Hey everyone, how you doing? Dan here, and today I thought we'd try something a little bit new. So today I'm joined by my good friend James, who is a wildlife photographer. I thought we could have a quick look at some of the best pictures we've taken over the last couple of months with a focus on bird photography. So I'll quickly pass you over to James and he can introduce himself.
Hi, so I'm James. I've been doing wildlife photography for just a few months now. Really enjoying it. Always enjoyed taking the odd snap on my phone, but a few months ago, around Christmas time, dusted off my old DSLR, which I used to use for videography back when I was a film and TV student, and I've just been enjoyed falling back in love with my camera, getting out there and just learning all about how to take good photos of wildlife, and a lot of those have been birds, so makes sense that they're the ones we're focusing on today.
Cool, that sounds great. So what we're going to do today is we both have picked 5 of our best images and what we've taken in the last couple of months. We haven't really seen the images what we've both chosen, so this will be a bit of a surprise for us too. So yeah, we'll both go through 5 of our images, we'll take it in turns and we'll just talk a little bit about the images and just talk a little bit about other things too. So shall we get started with one of your images?
Yeah, so first image I got here is a shot of a great tit. We actually took this on a walk together back at Sale Water Park.
Oh, Sale Water Park.
yeah, that old spot. So just the woods before you get to the main lake there. There's some woods there, and this wasn't actually taken like right in the middle of the woods. There's an edge to the tree line where there's some bird feeders next to a cafe. And I don't like taking shots on bird feeders, as we've discussed before, Danny.
Yeah,
like,
many times.
I actually feel like it's kind of a little bit, I don't know, cheating maybe. Like it's not a natural background. I don't like it at all.
No.
And just imagine an Instagram feed. This is where I post all my stuff, by the way, on Instagram. But imagine an Instagram feed if it was just shots of birds on feeders. I mean, I've seen a few of them out there, and it's just I like to have a bit more variety on mine personally. But however, having said all that, obviously this is one of my top photos, and I'll explain why. So it's taken at the bird feeders.
But you can't tell it's at the bird feeders.
No, because what a lot of birds do, and great tits are one of those birds, is they don't fly straight to the feeder. They'll check it out first. They'll do a little. They'll find a little perch nearby. They'll land there. They'll sort of scout out, make sure it's looking good. There's no people too close. There's no potential predators knocking about or anything big like a nuthatch that might bully them off. And then so they land and then they go in. And you want to get them when they land. They make that initial landing. And if you can get them like that, you can make use of bird feeders and still get that natural shot.
Yeah, and
not a shot of a metal cage.
Yeah, because it just doesn't look real, does it? And it's almost like kind of shooting in a zoo type of thing, isn't it? It's where you could get a great shot in a zoo, but you don't necessarily want that to be the image you put on, like a wildlife page.
Exactly, and even if you don't mind that sort of artificial look to something in your shot when it comes to shooting wildlife, even if you don't mind that, the thing is with bird feeders, a lot of them just look the same.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that it's man-made. It's because they're all so similar. And if that's all you're taking pictures of birds on, it's going to be pretty boring, frankly.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to love my third image, but we'll come on to that image number 3.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
But yeah, I just really liked the colours on this one. I didn't have to do a lot of work with it in post at all. I got that nice shallow depth of field. It was super sharp.
One thing I have noticed is it's a square crop. So is that something, do you shoot for the crop or is that something you kind of look at in post?
I try to shoot to the crop and I've been trying to do that more lately because and I know there is the option of not doing the 1x1, the square image on Instagram. You can actually have some. I think it's a couple of you can play around with the aspect ratio a bit, but I like it when you go on someone's profile and you see all the tiles and everything is in the aspect ratio and composed as intended. It's not sort of awkwardly cropped in on the preview, and you can do that with my profile, at least at the moment. Maybe I'll change that at some point, but right now I've just been sticking to my guns. If it doesn't work with the crop, it's not going on my Insta. I might keep the photo. I've got a few nice photos like birds in flight where it's super wide, but they just don't work for my Instagram, so they don't go on there.
See, I kind of find that kind of a bit of a problem with Instagram where, that's kind of like, I feel like altering your kind of creative output where you've got like a great image and then, you feel you can't post it on Instagram, then it can't go anywhere else. And I just think that's a bit of a shame sometimes because you can have some really, really good images and then they never kind of get out there because it can't be cropped down. I tend to use the 4:5 just because I've read on Instagram where it kind of takes up more for feed when you're scrolling. But then when you go down my Instagram feed, it's quite awkwardly composed. It's not necessarily perfectly composed when you go to my profile, which is a bit of a problem. But if you go over to my image, that's a 4:5 crop. And I kind of just like the composition on this one. I think a square crop on this one. I kind of like the looking room. So I think if it was cut off at the top, I just don't feel it'd have enough kind of space in it. And I like how you can kind of just imagine what the bird could just kind of just fly off. So I think the crop as well, it does kind of like add to the scene as well and add to the photo. I kind of just really like this image. It was taken at Dun and Massey. I think it was taken on let me just double check the settings, on the 100 to 400, and it would have been at 400mm. I like the colours on it. I do wish the angle's just a little bit not quite what I'd fully hoped for, but when you're in the moment, you can't get everything exactly right.
Nuthatch are very twitchy birds as well.
Yeah.
So it's rare that they stand still. And when they are standing still, it's usually because they're cleaning. So they're not really doing a great pose when they're cleaning. Their feathers are a bit ruffled. Or it's because they've, predators caught their attention, so they sort of look up. And, you don't really want a photo. You're already looking at it from downwards because nuthatch are nearly always on trees. That's like, they function similar to woodpeckers where they, peck holes in things and go up and down branches. So, you're already looking at it from below for it to then be looking upwards. So you just, they can be quite tricky to photograph. I guess is what I'm trying to say in a lot of words.
Yeah, it's the as well. And I mean, of course, with birds, a lot of them are in trees, aren't they? And it can be a bit of a pig. So you tend to always get that like looking down angle, well, looking up angle, and when you can kind of get the bird on your level and you can kind of get that kind of side profile shot, it does look, I think, in my opinion, a lot better. And I feel you can do a lot more with that, and you can see a lot more of the bird. But as far as images go, I'm not too unhappy with that one.
No, I like it. I think a way to achieve that with nuthatches, though, is so just briefly going back to go back to my shot. So with most birds, a good way to get them down to eye level, is to use the bird feeder trick, like I was saying before, where you're not taking a photo of it on the feeder, but they come into land and they're on a similar level to the feeder, which is similar to our eye level or just above it.
Yeah.
So you're not got that awkward, looking up, that underneath. If you take it like that. The problem with the nuthatch is it goes straight to the feeder. It doesn't scout it out. It's very direct.
Yeah.
So it doesn't land nearby. So that's quite tricky. But the way you can get around that with nuthatch is that their nesting holes often aren't very high up in trees. They're either they're not much taller than us. So they must be only like 8 foot, 10 foot up a tree trunk a lot of the time, in my experience. So you can often get them peeping out of the holes, or just about to go into a hole, but sometimes they look behind them to make sure they're not being followed or whatever.
Yeah, I noticed that it was at Sale Water Park as well, and assuming another photographer, he'd put some bird feed just on some wood, and the birds, it kind of had a rhythm, and one of them was a nuthatch, and it came down, it scoped the area, came down, and then it kind of did a circle, and then every 5-6 minutes it would come back around and get another 3 seeds, go on, and it just kind of had a very predictable routine. I say predictable, obviously you kind of get to that rhythm where then you think, I can get like a nice shot of it taking off, so you line it up and then of course it flies the other way. So there's only so much you can do with that, but
you raise a good point. A lot of the success I find with getting good shots is from knowing the bird's behaviour, and you get that not just through trying to take photographs of them, but through watching them. I nearly always watch them with my camera in hand for when that good opportunity comes, but I find that the birds I take the best pictures of are the ones I've been around for the longest.
Yeah.
It's extremely rare that my first encounter with a species will be a good photo.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it is just for the I saw that, just
Yeah,
that
yeah.
satisfaction of just getting that shot.
Yeah.
I've got quite a few shots of a few different birds that are a bit like I saw that shot, and I'm just like, right, I've got to go back and get a decent shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's great you've mentioned that, because that's something I want to come on to later on with the whole kind of like improvement and reflection of getting images, but we'll save that for later. So what you said you shoot on the Tamron lens. What camera do you shoot on as well?
Oh, not anymore on the Tamron.
Oh, yes, you upgraded, didn't you? Yes.
Yeah, that was my gateway lens. The reason I got back into wildlife photography was I made the choice to invest in a telephoto lens, which just changes everything when it comes to taking good photos of animals, because
it's essential. It is. Yeah,
it is. And unless you're only going for bugs, then you can macro it.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I use telephoto for butterflies a lot of the time, because if you get too close, they get spooked, they fly off.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I don't bother switching to my kit lens, which I use for macro. What with not having actual dedicated macro lens at the moment, but when it comes to butterflies, I will still use my telephoto lens, and it's not just birds. You can use it for a lot of different animals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And some would say a 300 mil is actually not quite enough.
That was
for bird photography.
I was just going to say that. I was going to do you feel it is, or?
With my camera, yeah. So I shoot on a 650D, a Canon 650D, which is ancient history. I got that in 2012. It's a decent little DSLR. I think it was described at the time as Canon. It was marketed as a intermediate rather than beginner or professional, or I think enthusiast is the other one, or I can't remember. I think it's all changed a bit now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much like a mid-range camera. The thing that helps when it comes to this camera is that it's not a full frame.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
So everyone always raves about the full frame cameras, especially the mirrorless ones, and they're amazing. That's what I want. However, you've got the R6. I'm very jealous. The good thing about the crop sensors, though, so the APS-C sensors, is that they do crop in and they do give you that extra reach with a photo. So while if you were shooting with this lens on your camera, it would just give you that 300 reach. Mine goes all the way up to 480.
Yeah,
which just gives me that extra bit of bump.
It's amazing.
And that it is. It's good for large birds. It's good for large wildlife. For small birds, I'd still say it's lacking a bit.
Yeah.
I say this knowing that some of my favourite photos I've taken with this lens are of small birds.
But you just think you could
they're all cropped.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all cropped.
And
when it comes to small birds, well, nearly all of them.
That's my problem as well with the Canon R6. So, you think, oh, great, full frame, but full frame is not great for wildlife photography. I mean, it is if you've got the converters and the 500mm lens, or even the 100 to 400 with a ×2.
Yeah.
Getting to 800mm on a full frame is fine. But on the R6, I can knock the frame down to a 1.6 crop. But the R6 is only a 20 megapixel camera to start with. And then when I do that, I think I end up with like a 7 megapixel image or something ridiculous. So when I come to post, then I've got absolutely no playroom at all. So bit of a shame with that. But yeah, I do think that the smaller the bird, the bigger the focal length you kind of need to get the better pictures, and getting as close as you can without spooking the bird. That definitely helps as well. And that just kind of compresses the background as well. I just realised I completely shifted focus away from my lens. I thought, because we started talking about the cameras, didn't we? Yeah.
But the lens was a Tamron lens. It's 7300 and cost 130 quid on Amazon. So it's decent, low investment just to see if I'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I had that for just over a month, and you get purple fringing on things. The autofocus was too slow, so I was shooting entirely on manual,
which is for bird photography
a little bit mad. But
the fact you
I got some decent shots with it.
Exactly, the fact you got some stuff there just shows what you can do this kind of stuff, and you don't need to rely on all of the the fancy expensive kit to do this. You can do this manual, and you can do this on older cameras too. And so I think in regards to kit, I don't think the camera is as important as the lens.
No, so I did, as much as I did get like a few good photos on the Tamarin. I was having to get rid of that purple fringing in post, which only takes a second. It's not that big a deal. But I also knew I'd get sharper shots with another lens, and I'd be able to use the autofocus as well. And I wanted to try out for some birds in flight. It was also, the Tamarin was also useless for small birds, because while something like a heron or like a diving duck or something like that is either going to swim by quite slowly or sit around for a while because it's hunting. In case of a heron, that's fine. That works with the Tamarin. What doesn't work is something like a great tit or a goldfinch or any of your standard small birds, because they don't sit around for long, and when they are sitting, they're sort of twitching, they're sort of moving backwards and forwards, and by the time you finally got them in focus,
they're gone.
Flown
away.
I shoot completely differently now, so I spent 500 on this fantastic 7300 Canon lens, which it's got the USM2, so it's got this really sharp motor for focusing. It's got inbuilt stabilisation,
which is a huge help. We'll be coming on to stabilisation later on. I think that's definitely.
I won't talk too much about that.
Got a good pitch for that.
But yeah, it's an awesome lens. I love it to bits. It doesn't go that wide at 5.6, so on an overcast day I have to bump up my ISO. I can't really go much higher than 800 usually,
which is
because it's an old camera, so the ISO isn't as generous as something on like an R6. So jealous. But yeah, it's still great, and it's completely changed the way I do photography. No more looking on the little monitor. I'm looking down the viewfinder, which makes life a hell of a lot easier.
Yes, I can imagine.
Not having to crop in, so it helps. And actually, looking down the viewfinder also helps with your autofocus. It works, or at least with this camera, it does anyway. I noticed that whenever I was looking through the monitor, and I would still do it if I had the camera on like ground level and I didn't want to lie down because it was muddy. I wanted that eye line shot of the bird like on the water or something. It would just take a lot longer for the autofocus to lock on, and the continuous shooting as well. It wouldn't come out like a machine gun at all. It would be like snap, snap, and it's just like
it's just not enough.
Slows everything down because the power is going to that screen.
Which is
it's not where you want the power going to.
No.
So
to just speak about focus, I've just got your second image up now, and I'm assuming that was definitely autofocus and none of it's manual focus.
That's right. In fact, all of these were taken on the Canon lens. So I don't think any of these are manual actually.
No.
Although I do still occasionally use manual for certain things.
Like
where the autofocus might get confused with loads of branches.
It's just handy. It's just sometimes handy just to kind of set the focus roughly on the bird, and then you can kind of let the autofocus do the rest sometimes, can't you?
Yeah.
So I'm just looking at this one, and I've just zoomed in on the eye, and it is definitely sharp, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's looking amazing. I mean, I didn't really notice this, but like just looking now, can you see right through the beak? Is that a hole in the beak? Yeah,
you can. You could like throw a paper airplane.
Yeah.
A very small one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a bit mad, isn't it?
Yeah. So, where did you find this one?
So this is a herring gull. It's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest gulls we got in the UK. I think the biggest is the great black-backed gull, but you're not anywhere near as likely to see that as you are the herring gull. And the herring gulls are the ones that will come down, screeching over your head and try and eat your chips. When you buy the meat. So they do actually have quite a bad rep for being quite aggressive when they're around food, or if you get too near to the nests, they don't like that either. They can get a bit pecky and be quite intimidating. However, they're also extremely photogenic.
Yes, we are. It's like it's got some lipstick on as well.
They're not really going to bother you unless you're near the nest and you have chits. I'm not trying to tell people to be scared of seagulls. That'd be ridiculous. It's not a Hitchcock's The Birds or anything. But and they're very photogenic, very beautiful birds when they're not being a pain in the arse. And you can get quite close to them because they're used to being around people.
Yeah, which is obviously great.
This one let me get quite close. It's on a very sunny day in Llandudno, a beautiful town on the north of Wales, and it was just sat on the edge of the pier, and I got nice and close to it and just went for a portrait shot. A lot of my favourite shots are portrait shots.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with this one, with the portrait, I like what the background is kind of really one colour. And it's really clear and there's no distraction at all. You're going straight to the bird.
Thanks. Yeah. So that's what you don't want with a portrait, or really any shot of wildlife, is you don't want the background to take the attention. You always want to make it really clear what exactly the focus is, and there's no mistaking it with this one.
No, and it can be quite difficult that sometimes, can't it, to get that background. You can have the bird in the perfect spot in the perfect light, but if that background's not right, it's probably not going to work too well. And something else what we'll come on to when I get to my third image. But I like it with a bird image when you've got a colour in the background. I like green, but the blue, obviously at the seaside, it works really, really well too. Looks really cool.
Yeah, it does feel very like a sunny day at the seaside, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is exactly what it was.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There you go.
So, how was you fully zoomed in on this image, or because you said you got quite close to it?
I don't think I was.
No.
And you really don't always need to be.
No.
I was at my aperture was set to 8.
Nice. Also keep everything sharp.
Yeah, and it was because I'd just been shooting birds in flight as well. So I was, shooting seagulls flying over, and then this one lands in front of me, and it's just one of those where it's like one less setting to have to change.
Yeah.
And I've also got a ridiculous shutter speed for this one. I was shooting at 3200, which is a bit mad. I should have lowered my ISO instead. My ISO was at 400.
Oh yeah, you had a couple of stops there.
Yeah, it was just one of those where it's, well, at the end of the day, I didn't need it. There's no noise on there. And I still had it high from birds in flight. So sometimes it's just kind of like, what settings do you need to change to get a good shot here? And with wildlife, they're not models. They aren't going to play ball. They will just get off when they feel like it. So, if you need to change as few settings as possible sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did in this case.
And that you said, that's kind of where the art of photography comes in, isn't it? It's not just a case of taking a picture. When you're taking the bird, you do have to think about how shallow you want the depth of field to be. Do you want it to be shallow? Do you want it to be narrow? And shutter speed is probably the most essential for bird photography. If the bird's nice and still, you can probably afford to get away with something slightly lower. But if it is in flight, especially something like the one we're both after, the kingfisher, they're super quick, and even like a shutter of 3200, maybe it might not be quick enough to get. So you're kind of balancing that all out with a different light and ISO and aperture.
Yeah.
And when you get to the big zoom lenses, it's very rare you find one with a lower aperture. So you've got obviously the 7200, which is 2.8, but that's probably no good for bird photography as a whole.
No, and as soon as you put that, you could be like, oh yeah, well there's the ×2 extender, but as soon as you put that on, it bumps up the aperture as well, doesn't it?
Yeah,
so
it doubles.
May as well have got the other lens, a cheaper lens.
But as you can see, like from your image, you don't need 2.8, do you, for this kind of stuff? I mean, Canon's new lenses, the 600 and 800, they're f11, so you definitely don't be needing. I mean, it helps, but it's not essential. No,
it's not. And the focal length can help you out here as well, can't it? If you've got a decent distance between your subject and the background and you're zoomed right in, it does help bump up that shallow depth of field as well, even if your aperture is a bit higher than you'd usually want for that.
Exactly, yeah. As soon as you start putting your focal length up, you're very quickly compressing that background, which always looks good.
You can get some nice surprises. Although I should say, we've said all this, I don't actually have a background really, a physical one. That is just sky.
Yeah.
So, for all you know, that might be completely sharp. You wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah.
So we probably brought all this up with the wrong photo, but hey-ho.
If we go up to my image,
okay.
So that's a little Goldfinch at, again, Sale Water Park, quite popular.
Yeah.
But this was on one of my journeys looking for the kingfisher, and I think there was about 4 or 5 little goldfinches just hopping around. And I think this was the first time I'd actually seen them, so I was quite pleased with just grabbing this picture. I just love the colours on it. It's like how it's looking off. But you see here, that tree branch at the back is probably only maybe 50 centimetres to a metre away, and it is quite nicely blown out. I mean, if anything, it might be a tad distracting looking at it now. But I think...
No, I don't think so. I think it's very clear.
Yeah. But it does,
like what you're going for here.
It does just go to show what, even now, because I shot this at f5.6, and it just goes to show even at 5.6, you know, you still do get that shallow depth of field, and it's nothing to be kind of put off by when you see these higher apertures on the lenses. It's, you know...
Not at all. I think, I'm just going to check my notes very quickly. Every single shot that I've chosen as my favourite bird shots is shot at 5.6. So there you go. Apart from the herring gull, which we just discussed. But all of the others are 5.6. So there you go. And I'll tell you what, we were talking about high shutter speed before. Some of these are dipping below 1,000 shutter speed.
Yeah.
The great tip was just 640 because that was an overcast day at the edge of a wood. The light wasn't that favourable, but that lens stabilisation really kicked in.
Yeah, which is having that stabilisation. It's so useful.
Yeah.
I mean, just on about exposure settings. This one was 5.6, 1/640th of a second. It was still, so I didn't need it too high, and my ISO was 1,000. When you zoom in, it's not really grainy at all. Actually, no, it's not grainy at all.
No, it's nice shot. Great colours as well.
Yeah,
I love the Goldfinch. They got a lot going on with them. The you know, that vivid red.
Yeah, I kind of like just the yellow on the wing. It's just
cool.
Cool.
Well, I guess it's how they get the name. It's funny because you don't really notice it that much. Well, you can here, but say they're just moving around, you only see like some behind the bird or whatever. It's often not until they take off that you see just how like golden yellow those wings are.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if you've got like a bird in flight shot of the goldfinch and then with its wings
something
spanned.
I've not achieved yet.
No, but
I only got a sharp image of a goldfinch that I was properly satisfied with after it was a while ago now, but it took a fair few attempts just to get a sharp image of one stood still because they're such twitchy little birds.
Yeah.
So, you know, anyone who gets a nice sharp image of a goldfinch, especially if you've only been doing this for a few months like ourselves, should be very happy.
Yeah.
And I think this one here is a lovely little image.
Yeah, and it just same with stuff like that with the birds moving around and everything. Probably one not skill, but one trait to have, I guess, is patience, isn't it? Which I'm not a very patient person. I want to go there, get the shot and get gone. But with capturing the birds, you've got to really think about it. You've got to, you know, you could be waiting for, 20, 25 minutes and get the shot. And then, if you go, the bird might come back 1 minute later. And the other day was when I was shooting the nuthatches. And when I was saying before about it, doing the loops round, getting the seeds, I just kept saying to myself, right, I'm going to go in 2 minutes, and I'd 2 minutes, and then I was like, oh, but it's not come, so I'm just going to wait again. And then it comes, and I'd miss the shot. I was like, 2 minutes. And I ended up being like 30 minutes still just sat in this garlic field, the wild garlic. I was like, oh God, I'm going to stink later on.
But that's just a nuthatch. Like, how many hours have you wasted on a kingfisher, Danny? Do you want to share that with YouTube?
I don't even have that data. But
I think kingfish is how you spent most of 2020. So
2021
kingfisher. Yeah.
So for you guys who've not seen, on my YouTube channel there is another video called Hunt for the Kingfisher, where I try and find a kingfisher in Sale Water Park. So check that out if you want to.
I'm still waiting for part 2.
That'll be done at Reddish Vale now. That seems to be
the new hotspot.
Yeah,
the new hotspot.
It's not at sale anymore, apparently. Right, shall we get on to picture number 3 of yours? Oh, Treecreeper, nice.
Another
great image.
Another twitchy little bird, yeah.
It's super sharp, so I'm imagining you had a high shutter speed for this one.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe so. I'm just checking my notes. 1,000. There you go. It's 1,000.
Cool.
So just about qualifies for a high shutter speed.
Yeah.
So this was actually on quite an overcast day. The ISO is on 400. It's 5.6, like everything else apart from the herring gull on my list. And it took quite a few shots to get one I was really happy with.
Yeah.
So the thing about Treecreepers, it's another small twitchy bird, which are
So your speciality.
yeah. The challenges, I like a good challenge.
Yeah.
And when you complete, I mean, that's often when I have a favourite photo, it's because it was difficult to get.
Yeah. Well, that's
that
kind of
makes it so satisfying. Yeah, and this one was quite difficult to get. Like Treecreepers, they don't land on branches, and the issue isn't that they'll only land on a branch and then they'll jump to another one and jump to, or the branch is often moving, like great tits or Goldfinch, they land on a light twig, so you got to up your shutter speed even higher. With the Treecreeper, it twists around the trees in and out of light. So already it's under a tree, so it's very unlikely to be in good light. So you're waiting for it. Well, not very unlikely, but it's going between windows of light from where the branches are putting shadow on the trunk. So you've got that issue. You've also got the issue that it's a tiny bird. It's about half the size of my hand. Yeah. So
for comparison.
yeah. To scale, official. Maybe you could put a little graphic there. Yeah. Slap a Treecreeper on
your hand.
I took my first photo of the Treecreeper. I was so happy with that I just actually got it in focus. That I rushed to Instagram. I uploaded it. I was like, I got a Treecreeper, and Woohoo! Then I got a better photo of a Treecreeper a couple of weeks later, and I actually went down and deleted my first encounter. Because it had a branch going across, not across the face, across the body, but it just really irritated me.
I mean,
and I don't delete all of my old shots. Like I keep a lot of the stuff I shot on the Tamron on there because I like to see a bit of progression.
Yeah, which is always great.
There's the odd shot that just really sort of pales over time, and that one for me, once I'd seen how good a Treecreeper shot can be, it was just kind of like, I don't really need that there. I'll keep it on my computer as just a little memento.
Yeah.
I don't really want it sort of like, I'm not wanting to show that off on my because there's not much to show off.
No.
It's like a branch like that, it just ruins a shot, especially with such a small bird.
Yeah. So. Well, if the branch is bigger than the bird is.
Yeah. And if you can get, so with something like a Treecreeper as well that spends a lot of time in shadow, if you can get something like just the light to catch its eye a little bit as well.
Yeah, which you can see that very clearly, that nice reflection.
Yeah, that can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Even if your shot's a bit underexposed, which I guess this one isn't, but I've had some other shots of them where they have been a bit underexposed, but because the head's well enough exposed and there's a bit of light in the eye, it's still usable.
Yeah.
So catching light in the eye just makes a big difference, even in like a dark scene.
I've noticed that over the past few pictures. To be fair, that wasn't something I really was looking out for when I was first starting out. But now it is something which is, if it doesn't have that kind of light in the eye, it kind of doesn't make it anywhere now.
No. Especially for a bird that's just got a plain black eye as well.
Yeah.
It just looks a bit lifeless without it. If you look at the herring gull, that eye is a bit like a human eye almost. It's got a very clear pupil.
Well, yes, you can see everything, can't you?
Yeah, the Treecreeper is just a black, soulless abyss.
Demon eye, yeah.
unless you get that bit of light caught in it. And then it looks beautiful.
It just adds a bit of personality to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And just with Treecreepers, I actually had two Treecreeper shots to choose from. They was in my top 10, let's say.
Okay.
None of them obviously made it to this, but yours is better.
Oh.
So,
well, thank
so
you.
But I had one where it's upside down, which is quite cool. I mean, yours is upside down too, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Treecreepers are quite cool because when you're out and about, there's always someone around. If you see, there's a Treecreeper up there, it's always quite an interesting little bird, isn't it? And everyone seems to have a story about a Treecreeper. Very similar to the kingfisher. Everyone are always, have you seen the kingfisher? But same with Treecreepers as well. I think they do have quite a reputation around here.
Yeah, they do. And I think with the Treecreeper as well, they're a bird that people struggle to get good photographs of because they often can't get close enough to it. With this Treecreeper, it's actually one I've gotten to know a little bit because there's a park just across the road from me. Yeah, I've got a park in my area that it's just really, really great for them, called Fog Lane. And yeah, there's a Treecreeper there that will come. It's just not bothered by people, basically, and it behaves quite differently to other Treecreepers I've come across, either at, Sale or Tatton or like Mersey Vale or whatever, where you see them and they're totally, and then as soon as you raise the camera, they realise you're there and bam, they're gone.
Never see them again.
And or you might see them like a few trees away, but you're not getting close enough for a shot because they know you're there now. Whereas this one knows you're there from the start and it doesn't care, it just gets about its business, and you've got loads of great chances for shots there. So if anyone in the area is struggling to get a Treecreeper shot, I'd say get on down to Fog Lane and just have a look for it. And if you want to know whereabouts in the park to go, just give me a little inbox on Instagram and I'll direct you to the good spot.
You'll draw a map.
Yeah.
X marks the spot, Treecreeper here.
Basically. Always happy to share locations though, because I think some people can be a bit cagey about location sharing, because they're just like, no, it's my spot for getting good shots. But I think it's always nice, like and a lot of people in the community do like to share where they find things. You can kind of see both sides from that. Like, obviously, if so many people know about a particular spot, it's obviously going to scare the birds away and kind of change the patterns around there. But it's sharing is caring kind of thing, isn't it? And it does depend on the bird, really. Like, obviously, if it's something super rare that is likely to be spooked by people, maybe you don't want to tell the world about it.
Yeah, exactly. Like a mink as well. Obviously not a bird, but we spotted one of them the other day, didn't we? Which was a pretty cool sight.
We did.
But won't linger on that too much because it's not a bird.
But let's have a look at your third one then.
Yeah, so this is where I just quite like this funny, angry robin. But this is, as you can see, some seed on a piece of wood. So this is where we were talking about earlier. But I'm not too fussed about it in this image. Obviously, I feel a little like I cheated a little bit, but I didn't put the feed down, so it was, and there's no bird feeder. But I just like how you can't really see its wings. It's just a chubby little fluff ball.
No.
It does look quite grumpy, like, get away from my food.
This is my favourite so far of yours. I love it. And it does kind of look like it's just walked around. It's not flown around, because like you say, it doesn't look like it has wings. It just looks like it's just built like a it's just strutted around, gathered all the seed, put it on its little post, and then it's like, come at me, bro. You really want to try and take my hoard? This is my stash. Hands off. I love it. I love the attitude in its face. Robins are usually like such friendly, chirpy little birds, and they are a bird that you can often get silly close to. Something I noticed when I started doing wildlife photography is they are the easiest small bird to shoot. I think they were the first, definitely, I know they were the first small bird that I managed to get a shot of that I was happy with.
Nice.
And that was with the tamarin as well. That wasn't even with autofocus, that was on manual, because it hangs there long enough because it's curious. It's a curious little bird, full of character. Love him. And this one, I mean, it's just a great example. They're usually very sort of happy, friendly looking.
Yeah, well, this one definitely isn't.
But it's still got character turned up to 100%. I mean, really nice shot. Great shallow depth of field as well.
That's what I was just going to say. Like, this is what I really like in a bird image, that nice green blurry background, which, because it's been winter, we've not really seen much of that. But now all the leaves are coming out and everything, it's starting to look a lot more like that. It's just really nice. And this is that same area where the nuthatch I was on about before was coming round, getting a few seeds, coming round again. So it was quite a popular little spot here. There was great tits, there was the nuthatches, there was robins, brown bird I can't remember the name of. The longtails were there as well, so it was quite a cool spot. So if I'd have used your technique, what you mentioned earlier about letting them get the food and jump off, or before they jump down to the food, probably would have got some super awesome shots in this.
I'm glad you didn't in this case, because I love this shot. I love how it worked out. It does look like it's like a little dragon in this stash of gold. Just on the hoard, just kind of like, don't even think about it, mate. So no, I love it. And I should say as well, it's not on a, it's stood above food that's been placed there by a person. It's not a bird feeder though.
No, it's not.
It's not got that metallic sort of cagey sort of aesthetic to it. You've not got any of that mesh or any plastic either. It's just a nice, robin on a post with a load of seeds.
Just with this conversation, I was actually wondering if I should Photoshop the seeds out. And
No,
like
no.
that did cross my mind at first. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
like should I just make it an angry Robin? But I was like, no, it's got food, and that's the story of this one. That's what's going on.
yeah.
So yeah, no,
Stay true to the story. That's something I've learned as well. So I started Photoshop around about the same time I started doing wildlife photography out of necessity, because like I say, that Tamron, although wonderfully cheap and a brilliant gateway lens, did come with a few issues, one of them being purple fringing.
Yeah.
And I needed Photoshop to get rid of that. Well, you could probably do it on some cheaper apps, but I had access to Adobe Creative Cloud, so Photoshop was my weapon of choice. And I learned to use Photoshop, and it just opened the gateway to some interesting creative opportunities. And with some of those early shots, I found myself editing twigs out of shots. Just a twig that I didn't like. With a buzzard shot, there's a buzzard I got. I was very lucky to have one almost at eye level, a place called Abney Hall in Cheadle. And on a nice icy day, it landed not too far from me, but it was just, no matter what angle I tried to get at it from, it just had too many twigs in front of it. I ended up tidying it up a bit in Photoshop, and it does look like a better image, but because I know what it looked like before, it just feels a bit too fake.
Yeah, I'm very much along those same lines. To be fair, I have edited some pictures to the point of where it's a whole new image. And we was actually on about this, was it this morning or the other day, the Frankenstein image?
The Frankenstein image, yeah.
I've got a heron, which I've done that to. And to be fair, in my top 10, there was, I think, maybe one or two Photoshopped images, but they just don't cut it. I feel like, I'm not sure if we're on the same lines here, but if it's not quite right and you've had to change it, I feel like I've got to go back and get it and try and do it differently next time to avoid that.
So I crop in post. I adjust the exposure a little bit. I might adjust saturation, the blacks, the whites, and just like play around with the colours a little bit. I don't get rid of twigs anymore. Yeah, really at all.
You shoot around it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If there's a really minor problem, maybe I would, but since sort of deciding I wouldn't do that anymore, I haven't found a reason to today. I just get a better photo. Yeah,
and just with what you're saying about the exposure settings there as well, and the tweaking in Lightroom or Photoshop, I tend to find what the 5 images here didn't actually require that much grading or touch up, especially with the colours. I mean, like I said, just slight tweaks on the dial, but nothing too much. Yeah. Whereas other images, I know I've gone way too far, and that's one thing I think I found with bird photography and wildlife photography is I'm not sure if it's just me but I don't feel there's as much kind of creative control in the edit. I feel because the bird is a certain colour, it's got to maintain that colour throughout the editing process. Whereas, if I was out in the city shooting a building, or some architecture, I wouldn't be too afraid of tweaking the colours to get like a nice kind of look and grey to it. But I think with bird photography, it's very much kind of keep the colours as they are.
Yeah, if you've got a profile that's dedicated to birds, or like mine, just wildlife in general, it's often followed by people who have similar interests. Yeah. They know what these creatures look like. They know if it's bullshit.
Exactly. Well,
so yeah, just don't try and bullshit the enthusiasts, because they always know.
Well, I just remember, I think it was probably one of my first bird pictures I sent you. It was I thought it was a bullfinch, but it wasn't. It was do you remember what it was? And you had to ID it.
Stone chat.
Stone chat, yeah, that was it. And I graded that one. I put my bloody my orange teal look on it, and I obviously I put it on my Instagram, but I wouldn't do that again now. It looked cool, but it wasn't the bird. So
I liked the shot, but I know what you mean. It looked over manipulated.
Yes.
There's a shot. There is a shot I took in my early days on the Tamron of a goldfinch. It's 1 out of 2 shots of goldfinch on my Insta at the moment, and that one was underexposed, had twigs in the way, and the colours were completely washed out. I did everything to make that shot usable. it was shot on the Tamarin, so it was it was back when the struggle was very real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did and it was in this really dense sort of thicket at the edge of a wood as well. So I had so many little twig obstacles, and you can just tell it's just a bit fake. It's a nice enough image.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a real bird. Like, it almost looks like a painting.
Yeah. But it's still identifiable. Like, you could still...
It's an identifiable painting. There's a much, much sharper, more realistic looking goldfinch shot, which I did barely anything to, apart from cropped in, up the saturation. And it looks like almost a completely different bird.
Yeah, it does.
And it looks real. Like,
so that's what... That's So you got to make the bird look real.
yeah. You want that authenticity. Like, sure, you want to make it look beautiful. You want to make the colours pop, etc., etc. But if it doesn't look real, it doesn't look like a photo, really.
No.
So yeah.
Which
End
is,
of that.
Yeah, fair enough. So shall we move on to the next image? Oh, lovely Mandarin shot. Now I already know where this one was taken. This was Abney, wasn't it?
Oh yes, this is one of our. So I should say, me and Danny shoot a hell of a lot together. He's my only friend who is into wildlife photography. So if I'm ever accompanied on a shoot, it's by Danny. Apart from that, I do everything just by myself. Violence, but but this is one of our best shoots together.
Yes, it was.
So we went to Abney, I think it was early March, quite a cold evening, but it'd been a very sunny day. And a lot of the wildlife were out in force because there are actually some flies, which at that time of year in the UK is when they're just starting to, there's some sorts of flies around all year, but it's when you're starting to get like midgey and stuff like that over the surface of the water again. So you had things like bats flying around, which is what we actually went there to shoot.
Yeah, that was tricky.
with low levels of success. But it was still fun.
Yes, it was.
Sometimes, it's just fun to attempt. And we got some stuff sort of maybe some nice mementos,
yes.
If they're not usable shots. But, there are herons around, and one of our favourite birds from that evening was this Mandarin, which was just it was coming towards the end of the day, sun was going down, like I say, and it looked very sleepy, and then it got up on this little perch and it shut its eyes, and it just looked, Mandarin looked photogenic at the best of times, but I've never seen one sleeping before.
No, it is quite cute.
Yeah, that perch, it's just an old post. I'm not even sure what it's used for on the pond, because it's not something like it's not a boating lake or a boating pond or anything like that. So I don't know if it's used for some sort of netting or whatever, or maybe it was put there intentionally as a perch.
Yeah,
it almost looks like a sculpture. I just love how dynamic it is.
Yeah.
And the way the Mandarin was perched on there, like one of the most photogenic ducks out there, I just absolutely loved it. And this is shot at an unusually high ISO for me, and it probably won't be a very high ISO for the mirrorless users out there, or maybe some of the more modern DSLRs. But this was at 1600, which for me is just like, it's the grain train. It's when the grain starts moving in, and I know that I'm going to have to denoise a bit in post. And I know if I crop in more than a tiny bit, the image is just unusable. So this is just a very slight crop.
To be fair though, when you zoom in, there isn't that much grain. I'm looking quite intent. I can see bits, but it's. Yeah. I'd rather get the image and have a bit of grain rather than no image at all.
This was denoised significantly.
Oh, was it?
I should say, and
it's not softened it too much.
No, and but the Mandarin, the bird lends itself to this because it's not a bird that's got sort of little dots or something like that on it, or sort of really fine, intricate details beyond that sort of feathering, so almost like a beard underneath its face.
Yeah.
But that wasn't too fine so as to get sort of smudged. It's sort of, it looks almost like it's sort of matte painted anyway.
It does. Yeah.
So you don't really lose that much when you denoise it, because it it doesn't have sort of a rough texture to it anyway. It already looks slick as.
Yeah,
So it worked quite nicely in this instance. It wouldn't work for every bird at all, but you can get away with it with a Mandarin.
Yeah.
And I didn't just get away with it. It's one of the favourite shots I've taken. So
Yeah, it's really good. I like how where you've got like the right angle at the bottom, and then the Mandarin kind of fills in the lines of a triangle, so you're kind of drawn right into it in the middle. That looks really good. I don't know if I'd prefer the Mandarin facing away from the stick. Obviously, it's not something you can do. I'm not sure if it's a bit enclosed.
I wouldn't. I'll tell you why. Because then it wouldn't have the looking room.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, perhaps if you had another crop, it would.
Yeah.
But I primarily I hang some stuff up around my flat as of quite recently, but most of my stuff is just for sharing on Instagram. And like I was saying before, I usually shoot with that in mind, and this works perfectly in that case.
I think actually as a square, where it is all enclosed.
It is kind of like a square, isn't it? So
no, that's looking really good. Well, you just mentioned actually where you've framed some images. Obviously, that's going to be a different crop to your actual images on Instagram. So have you found what you've had to kind of like re-edit them to put in the frame?
It was quite an interesting process actually. I did that the other day. A couple of these shots are on there, but it doesn't always work.
No,
to be frank, it doesn't always work. Sometimes it's a completely different photo. Sometimes it's better, but it's nice revisiting the favourites.
Yeah. So it's good to look back, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting to see which birds work next to each other as well.
Yeah. Like
currently in my frame, I've got like a great tit next to a blue tit, which anyone could have told me that was a bad idea, but it was just I was very tired of it.
It just happened.
And I realised that when I put it all together, there was no way to, because of the layout of the frame, which is like one in the middle, then everything else circles it, and I put the blue tit in the middle, and there was and it was clearly the best photo for the middle, but there was no good way to separate them, so I had two very similar looking birds next to each other. So it's just a case of I guess switching those out,
rearranging it,
that a bit more. But you do revisit shots, and it's nice to revisit. It's not always impractical.
No, and just with that revisiting shots, and even just like when you actually see a bird for the first time, I think it's quite good. Like I tend to like take it in stages. So the first shot I get of a bird, I'm not really bothered if it's exposed or composed right. I just want to get the shot of a bird. Then
the scene it shot, like we were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Before.
And then stage 2 for me is kind of like, okay, well, now I know where the bird is. I want to be able to get a better shot. Again, this shot doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be getting to the stage now where I'm just tweaking settings. And then finally, stage 3 should be, getting the shot and where I'm happy with it and where I'd be happy to post it. And that's where, just going back to the kingfisher, because it's something what we've still yet to capture, I feel that I've done step 1 now. Step 2, I feel like I've done as well. I kind of know the settings now and know what kind of thing I'm looking for. And now with step 3, I'm ready just to go in there and get it now.
Yeah.
All set.
I wasn't even sure if you'd bring that up. I was biting my tongue because I was like, I know this is exactly what happened with the kingfisher, but obviously where we left off with your kingfisher series is you hadn't seen anything yet.
No,
I know for a fact that you've taken a few photos since then.
Yes, spoilers.
But they just haven't been up to your... I wasn't going to say anything, but you spoiled yourself.
Yeah.
So now I am saying something. But they haven't been up to your high standards, so it'll be interesting to see...
so that's kind of like...
See the little progression there when...
Exactly,
when,
and I just think that's always nice just to have that going for your pictures and looking back.
Definitely.
And even when you come to re-edit them. And
it's really nice.
Just speaking of that kind of stage process, so my image is a fat, nice African goose we saw at Reddish Vale the other night when we was on one of our other shoots. Yeah. And again, this process, so we both saw this bird and it was just like, oh, that's a bit different. What's that? So step 1 straight away is like, oh, okay, how are we going to capture this? Step 2, following the bird around, trying to get some nice angles, like literally just going around it. And then step 3, I got this, I'm fairly happy with it. I wish the grass wasn't on its beak, but again, I
know. So I got a very similar photo, like you say, we were together, and yeah, I thought exactly the same thing. What a messy eater, what a grass gobbler,
Grass gobbler.
Yeah. But it was a really cool looking bird though. It's actually a domestic species rather than a wild, a domestic breed rather than a wild species. I couldn't find it in my bird book. As soon as I Googled domestic, then it came up as the African goose. But I think it's stems from a grey lag, but I'm not going to get into
no.
I'm completely out of my depth there. But they have this really interesting ridge, don't they? Very prehistoric looking.
Yeah.
And,
It's like a dinosaur.
It's a nice portrait, this.
And I just, just with the eye, get the nice reflection. You can even see its eyelashes, which I think just birds having eyelashes makes me laugh. It's not something you think of every day, is it?
And you got that bit of gold coloration between the black on the crest and the eye line. Yeah,
didn't even notice that, to be honest, but yeah.
What? How do you miss these things?
No, it's always there.
And those deep brown eyes. Again, they've not got those sort of black, almost soulless eyes. I feel bad calling a Treecreeper soulless. I love those.
Yeah.
But, they've got very sort of like almost anthropomorphic, human-like eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
With a lot of character.
Exactly, yeah.
And this one was by itself, and it was a little bit nervous of us, wasn't it?
It was.
Around. But eventually, when it realised we just wanted pictures and we weren't trying to kill it, it was fine to do a few poses with its mouth full of grass, some ugly grass poses for us.
It's signed a release form.
But but no, really really interesting head shape though.
Yeah, it's
nice portrait
just
there.
a bit weird. So shall we jump on to the final two images?
Oh, go on then.
Oh, so this was a golden hour one, was it?
Yes, golden hour shot.
Yes,
that's right.
That is very nice.
So I had a long day at work. I've been sat in front of the screen all day. I just needed to get out, and I just saw that even though it had been quite a miserable day, the heavens had opened, the sun was coming down, and I thought, can I bike it up to Chiltern fast enough to catch golden hour? So I got my bike. Let's
go.
down there. And I was just looking around. At this point, the sun was pretty low. So I was looking to find those little pockets of light from the very back end of golden hour, and this swan just swum across, just kind of like, don't worry, bro,
I've got your hand.
I got into the right shot, got into the right spot. Sorry, and just lingered there for a moment. It kept putting its head underwater, feeding on, I don't know, some reeds or something, weeds on the bottom, and then every time it lifted its head, I'd have another opportunity for a shot, and I won't lie, it took a fair few attempts to get one I was happy with.
But it's very good.
Because it would either go down too fast or it would blink or something like that. But we or something awkward would happen in the background, like a mallard would swim by and just you wouldn't have that nice complete blue.
Yeah.
But it looked nice, and the fact that it was diving and rather than just sitting there, even though it made things a bit. I say diving, putting its head down.
Yeah. Scooping
even though it made things a bit trickier for me, it made for a nicer shot.
Yeah.
Because it got this little droplets of water which really add to it.
There's just so much detail when you zoom in. You can see all the droplets. You see the reflection in the eye, and on the beak you get like that nice kind of ridged edge as well, which is
you got that. Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you brought that up because it's just. Golden hour, just good light in general, but especially golden hour, right at the start of the day as well. Yeah. It's not just the back end, I remember. But it really, really does bring out not just the colours, but also the details in a shot.
It does.
Any good light will do that. And you notice things that you've never noticed before. And I hadn't really noticed these little ridges along the bottom of a swan beak until I started photographing them in really nice light like this, and it just completely changes the portrait.
It does make such a difference shooting in the right light, and that's not saying what normal light is bad, but when you get these golden hours and blue hours, things just start to look amazing, don't they? I remember I set my drone up one morning and it was a misty winter morning and it just looked absolutely incredible. It was just the right timing. It just looked great. The only problem with golden hour in summer is you've got to get up at 5 o'clock to get it.
I'm more likely to catch it at the end of the day in the summer. but in the winter, I got a few in the winter.
Yeah, which is quite nice. And
in the early morning.
If you do get the same image, and in golden hour and a normal hour, you will be able to tell the difference, and it will just totally stand out. It
really works.
So speaking of that, what would you say 2 tips would be to get better wildlife photography?
Oh gosh, 2 tips to get better wildlife photography. I suppose I could just drill down on something we sort of mentioned briefly before, which is get to know your local birds. You said wildlife photography, but given we're talking about birds, I mean, I guess it does apply to every wildlife. Get to know what species are in your area. Don't be too complacent about what's local. I mean, I don't drive. I just cycle everywhere. If I do get to go out somewhere a bit further, I'm either using public transport with a friend like yourself or with family.
Yeah.
But, I'm quite fortunate in that I'm in an area where I've got like a few nature reserves and parks to choose from, all within half an hour on a bike. And just going to those places repeatedly over and over, you start to learn the different species that are there, which change with the seasons, which makes things very interesting. But also the different routines. I know ringneck parakeet, for an example, which didn't make my list, but that was one of the first birds that I set out to photograph.
Yeah.
They are present in a lot of parks here in South Manchester, but I won't even try to photograph them anywhere other than Fog Lane Park, because that is where they nest the lowest, and it is where they are the least wary of people as well. In somewhere else, like Sale Water Park or Fletcher Moss, you're not going to get as close to a parakeet as you can.
No.
Fog Lane.
I mean,
so
even at Platfields here, you can get quite close to them as well. So yeah, it's knowing what they do, isn't it? Knowing where they are.
Yeah, great crested grebe as well. They're at Sale Water Park, sure. You will get a far better shot of them at Cholton Water Park, just because you can get to spots where the light is better.
Yeah.
And you can get much closer to the birds. There's like little bits where the water, there's like an island in the middle, and they're sort of funneled through this water, which they like to dive around, which comes quite close to the shore. Whereas Sale does have an island, but
it's quite.
I've seen the grebes, they're usually much further out, so it's
hard
unlikely to get a great shot. They don't have a nice background as well from Sale, because you're looking towards the motorway
lovely
from where you stood, which isn't as good as a nice tree line that you get at Cholton. So it's just know your locations. And I say, know your local birds, appreciate your local locations, and get to know them.
Yep.
And another tip.
Well, whilst you're thinking of your second tip, I'm just going to jump in with my first tip, and it's quite similar to your tip, where you're saying about know the birds, know the locations. Mine's know your kit. So understand the capabilities of your kit and use it to your advantage. Understand your manual exposure. Understand what you want to capture. If you're looking to capture a very specific image, you already can vision it in your mind. From that, you should be able to kind of calculate what settings you need and what camera, what modes you need. So kind of just the more you know the kit, the more you can be prepared. And when you put kind of my tip with James's tip together, that's when you're going to start hopefully getting the really, really great images, what you'll want to share absolutely everywhere. Maybe even put them on stock sites, make a bit of money too. But I definitely think knowing your kit is definitely something to to have. And it's what the great thing is with wildlife photography, especially birds, is what all the birds are so different. So capturing a bird on a perch is going to give you very different exposure settings to capturing a buzzard in flight, or a kingfisher in flight, or a tree creeper running around the tree. So once you can be prepared for all these kind of eventualities, you can start saving custom presets on some cameras, so you can kind of just quickly switch between them, and you're there in the moment, just ready to get the exact image what you need to get. And just having them settings keyed in can be the difference between getting the shot and not. Yeah.
So, but going back to kit, linking back to your point about kit, with that is I don't have the option to pre-save settings on my camera like yourself, but because I've got to know my kit, I can do it in about 3 presses of a button. If I'm taking a shot of a bird that's still on a perch, and I've got the one shot autofocus on, I've got the single point area focus, I could then see a buzzard flying over, I switch to multi-point, I switch to AI servo, and that just takes a second. Just rapid fire, like you're trying to shoot the buzzard down. But it's just just being able to, once you've played around with those settings and you've got to know it, you switch so quick. You can become like really adaptable. So it's great.
To be fair, like even we're saying like my camera can do the custom modes, but I don't have any set yet. So it's the same. But I just tend to I just have my back button focus set, and then
back button focus. My gosh, this wasn't going to be my second point. I've got something else to say.
Okay, but we can.
God.
We can share this point because back button. Oh my god, back button focus. It's a tongue twister. Back button focus is a lifesaver.
It really is.
So, what this does is it allows you to remap the focus button of the camera to a button on the back, and that allows you to use the shutter button as a shutter, and then you can focus with the button on the back. And it's what this allows you to do is to keep the focus hunting whilst you're taking the picture. So you kind of almost not guaranteed, but you're more likely to get a sharper shot on the bird. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that as well.
No, it just feels far more natural, like just less clumsy, less likely to make mistakes. It's perfect for something like servo as well. You are getting something like a bird in flight, but I'd say it's perfect for everything. I remember when I first tried it, I was just like, I'm gonna get to grips with this over the next day or two, and I was like, I came back from the shoot, I was like,
done.
What was on about get to grips with this? This feels like more natural than what I was doing before. This is just
it's such a nice way, isn't it? It just works. And
some people say it takes a bit of adjusting to. Everyone's a bit different, but it felt better for me.
I use it for everything now, and like especially even not even wildlife shooting, just everything. It's just so useful. Before we go on to our next tip, shall we go over to my final image? So
we'll go on then.
So I knew this was one of my top 5 images when I took it, and when you sometimes are out shooting, you just know you've got something quite nice, something what I wasn't even looking for this shot, but the leaves ended up framing this Mandarin randomly sat in a tree quite nicely. But this image is not a technically perfect image. So this is where it was mentioned earlier about image stabilisation, and on this shot that definitely came in handy. So me and James, we went out to Reddish Vale to another one of our shoots, and it was overcast, it was raining, it definitely wasn't
it was
shoot
an
weather.
Awful evening weather-wise. It was a brilliant evening in every other way. The weather was bad.
it was grim, wasn't it? But I like this image because you can't tell it's actually that crappy of an evening.
Not at all.
A couple of things to think about with this image is the ISO is 8,000, which is absolutely insane. Like, I think we looked at your camera, didn't we? And it didn't even go up to 8,000, did it? No. Which is...
I can't use past... I can only... I'm reluctant to use 1600.
Yeah.
So
there's just over the past... I'm not sure how many years the difference between the 650 and the R6 is, but let's say maybe 8 years, maybe push.
Almost a decade.
Yeah.
Almost.
So
8 or 9 years.
Just that progression's going from, being able to not only shoot at ISO 8000, but it actually be usable. I mean, when you zoom in on the image, it is grainy. It definitely is grainy. But
not as grainy as my 1600 though.
No,
without a bit of denoising. And I'll tell you what, this looks like it's on a beautiful summer's day. I'd say maybe June or July, and it's just you wouldn't think it was at 8 o'clock on a really miserable Monday evening in April, where we were just getting living up to its name, April showers. We were just getting rain on and off for the whole, and it was completely overcast. We were having loads of wonderful wildlife encounters, but the light just really wasn't working for us. But your camera really rose to the challenge here and just knocked it out of the park, didn't it?
And so the R6 has got the stabilisation in camera and on the lens, so that helped. So that allowed me to get my shutter speed down to 100th of a second, which on a 400mm lens is absolutely ridiculous. If you zoom in, you can see motion blur. When I looked at it on the camera, it looked fine, and I thought it was sharp, but it's not. But
it looks fine now.
Well,
I mean,
it's been.
I'm looking for this motion blur. maybe a little bit on the back of the bird.
If I showed
very
you
slightly.
if I showed you the original, it would. This has been through Photoshop. This one.
Oh right. I'll tell you what. You didn't Frankenstein it. It doesn't look like a painting. It still looks natural.
Yeah.
If I didn't know when this was taken, like I said, it looked like it was on a sunny day. It doesn't look like it was taken on an overcast day. Then just like Frankenstein.
That's what I also like about it as well. It doesn't even look like it's been taken in England as well. This would be like a tropical rainforest in Asia or somewhere.
That's just Mandarin. I had a friend inbox me the other day, just like, "Where are you, the Amazon?" Like,
no,
it's like, no, Cheadle. And that was a shot of a Mandarin. I mean, that is a great thing about. I think I'll just say it. British wildlife is underappreciated. Vastly. British outdoors in general is underappreciated, but British wildlife, I think people think everything's just a very boring brown. There's not like a lot of biodiversity, and they're never in interesting places. They're just in like boring grey overcast fields. Get outside, go find something. Just look out, you'll find something.
It's all there.
Don't be complacent. It is all there, and like you step outside, you'll find so much. It's just stop moaning about the weather on your Facebook status. Step outside and explore, and you will find. And it's so rewarding.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You'll have a blast.
Well,
you'll love it.
When you put in these situations where weather isn't perfect or it's less than perfect, that's when you learn. But to get this image, you got a similar image as well, didn't you? But you need to know your camera. If you don't know what your settings do, this image I don't think would have been possible. And it's just putting all that together and ending up with quite a rewarding image, which I think is quite cool. And I'm just going to come on to my second tip. It's not quite related to this image, but I have used it on probably 3, maybe 4 or 5 of these images, and that's to shoot in burst mode. So that some cameras can shoot in like 20 FPS or 12 FPS. It's different for every camera, but if you just hold your shutter down and you can capture all of the moments. So if the bird, like I said earlier on, it blinks or something like that, you can capture it without it blinking, or it might be just about to take off. So if you hold your shutter down and get that sequence, you can get all sorts of like weird, wonderful images. So, and just having them moments in between, it just gives you so much more choice to choose from in post.
Yes, definitely.
When I just put my shutter down now, it takes probably like 3 or 4 images without me even knowing. It's just like, it's like, when you're looking back, it's like, I've got 3 of the same image. But I think it's worth having just as a safety backup type of thing.
Yeah, my camera is quite slow in comparison. What frame? How many frames is yours?
20.
Mine's 8.
Oh,
but I have the same thing where I can shoot a sequence.
Yeah.
People will be like, "Oh, 8 is like it's like grandma speed," but it still gets the job done. Like I've got some nice sequences. I've got a bird sort of sat on a branch, and then something catches its attention. Maybe it's a hawk or something, and it just flies off, and you got that flying out frame. I've got like a great crested grebe, looking around, then diving, and you got different stages of the dive. So. You can still get stuff even with those sort of those cameras that aren't quite as fast as that. There's a lot you can get.
No,
I don't shoot. I never shoot single shot. I always shoot continuous shutter.
It's just so useful, isn't
now,
it? And
I used to only shoot single shot.
I was the exact same.
I used to commit a hell of a lot of sins in those first couple of months when it comes to wildlife photography, but I've learned a lot, and a lot of it is through. Trying to photograph something and thinking, well, why did I fail at that? Is it the camera's fault, or is it my fault? Is it a lack of knowledge?
Well, that's that.
Most of the time, it is a lack of knowledge. You can squeeze that juice out of your kit. It's like, remember the wagtails we shot? At Mersey Vale. That encounter, you were getting nice crisp shots of them. That encounter made me realise I need to learn AI servo. I know. This must be possible. I need to find a way of shooting a bird in flight. I was using one-shot autofocus to try and shoot a bird in flight. What a madman! But like I say, I've only been doing this for a few months. Exactly. I knew nothing, so I was just like, "Why did that fail?" And I discovered AI servo, and it's just a game changer. And then,
it's like what we were saying earlier on, that reflection, isn't it? Right, kind of step 1, take the image. Step 2, make it better. Step 3, get the perfect image.
Yeah, but I was stood there for about 15 minutes with you trying to get these shots. I mean,
to be fair,
it's ridiculous, but sometimes it takes just an epic fail like that to really give you a kick up the arse and take your photography to the next level.
and there's nothing wrong with that at all. That's totally fine. So
we can laugh at it now.
Yes.
But yeah.
So, do you have a final second tip?
Yes, I would say one of the most overused sayings, no offence to you, Danny, because I know you said it earlier in this conversation, is that wildlife photography requires patience. And while that in some respects is true, patience in terms of learning things, like I said, the sort of trial and error, patience in terms of getting to know creatures' habits, I think the way that translates to a lot of people is you just need to sit in a hide for hours and just wait for something. That is a stereotype. A lot of people will do that for wildlife photography, but you don't need to do that to get good photos.
No.
I am not the most patient person ever.
No, me neither.
Anyone who knows me well will back up. But and I one of the ways I got into wildlife photography is because I was walking so much to stay sane during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I was just going out, to countryside, and eventually I was cycling as well. And I was just seeing all these things on my walks, and I was getting some of it on my phone camera, but it just doesn't compare, does it?
Oh no, not at all.
And then I realised, why aren't I capturing this properly? And I set out and started, trying to take good photos of it just on my walks, and that's how I got into it. But a lot of the time you can just walk around and find stuff, and when you know the spots, you can. It's worth lingering there for a little bit if you know it's the territory of something. Say there's like a nest there or something like that, or it's a popular feeding ground, or you're just waiting for the right light. But you don't need to just sit in the same spot for hours to see something. That is not the case at all.
No.
I've not done that once, and I've got a lot of photos that I'm quite proud of and happy with. I will try out hide photography at some point, but you don't need that to get into wildlife photography. So if you're worried, if you like animals, your birds, anything, any wildlife, don't be put off thinking like, I enjoy these creatures, but I definitely couldn't sit still for 3-4 hours or whatever. You don't need to.
No, it's
just get out there with your camera, see what you can find. You will find things. As soon as you look, seek and ye shall find, or whatever it is. Like, it is one of them, isn't it? Like, as soon as you start looking, you will find things. Like the Mandarin duck that a lot of people don't even realise, is in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. And then even more so finding one stuck in a tree.
Yeah. Well, they do. The Mandarin is one of those ducks that will fly up into trees, but it is quite a bizarre image.
Yeah, just when you see it, yes.
Yeah, because you're used to seeing them like on little islands or around the side of a pond or whatever,
not higher up.
Ducks, but mandarins don't mind, and it does make for those lovely shots like the one you captured, where it's just a bit different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ducks,
Which makes a nice image. Well,
indeed.
I think that's our 5 images, and we've both done our 2 tips. So thank you very much for joining me, James. And if you do want to check out James's Instagram, it's JPSCnature on Instagram. And if you want to check out my Instagram, that's @DanielHallMedia. And thank you very much for watching. If you did like it, please leave a like, comment and subscribe. And check out the other videos on the channel too. There's quite a lot on there now. But cheers, guys.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no worries. Cheers.